The world is full of mystifying myths and legends, but the Navajo legend of the Skinwalker is one of the least understood of all. Indeed, it is perhaps the only mythological entity whose originators seem to be sworn to complete secrecy on the subject. Most Navajo are hesitant even to mention skinwalkers in passing conversation among themselves, and if an outsider were to ask about these mythical creatures, he would receive nothing but a startled and stone-faced denial. But the walls of silence that have been built up around the Skinwalker are not airtight. A few obscure, anecdotal stories of shape-shifting entities playing pranks on the locals have found their way through the embargo. From them we have learned that the Skinwalker of hushed Native American legend has a name in Navajo that is never supposed to be pronounced, or even mentioned. But if you feel brave enough to sound it out in your own mind, the Navajo name for these fearsome fiends is Nealdushme. According to Navajo folklore, the mere utterance of this name is dangerous because it could draw the unwanted attention of a skinwalker. As scary as these entities are, the myth maintains that skinwalkers were originally human beings. Specifically, they were medicine men or shamans who achieved superhuman awareness and mastery of their soul but turned toward the darker side of reality somewhere along their spiritual journey. For some unknown reason, these once holy men, after reaching enlightenment, simply chose to become evil.
In order for a skinwalker to obtain his extraordinary powers, he had to kill someone of his own bloodline. This previously holy man was then imbued with the sinister and unholy power of the skinwalker, which included the ability to shapeshift into just about any animal known to man and some that were completely unknown outside of legend. The most infamous of these animal forms is that of a highly unusual dog, wolf, and coyote-type creature that is usually much larger than its natural counterpart. These strange canines can run at incredible, unheard of speed, and they have even been witnessed running on two legs. As if these canine aberrations weren't frightening enough, the skinwalker is also connected to a more primal strain of the paranormal. Many have witnessed these shapeshifters morph into fairy, ape-like creatures. These entities can only be described as the classic Bigfoot or Sasquatch of North American folklore. And this is only the tip of the paranormal iceberg. As we proceed with the true story of the skinwalkers and the Utah ranch that became infamous for hosting them, we will break the conspiracy of silence that has long surrounded the skinwalker wide open.
Most stories have a clear beginning and a clear end, but the beginning of the great mystery that is Skinwalker Ranch and its immediate surroundings could be as old as the beginning of time. Native Americans have passed around legends about this haunted corner of Utah long before the ranch or any other permanent settlement existed. But the European settlers who came after them would note the high strangeness as well, and perhaps that's a good place for us to start the tale. Mormon leader Brigham Young was one of the earlier chroniclers of this Utah oddity. Young succeeded the founder of the Mormon faith, Joseph Smith, as president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints after Smith's assassination. He then led his followers west to escape further religious persecution, establishing several Mormon colonies in what was then unsettled American territory. One of these colonies was located on what would one day become the grounds of Skinwalker Ranch. Brigham Young's first forays into this haunted stretch of land occurred in the early 1860s, when he sent a survey team to see if the Uinta Basin would provide habitable land for settlers. Their findings were disappointing. When they came back, they reported that the whole region was a vast contiguity of waste, which was completely valueless except for nomadic purposes, hunting grounds for Indians, and to hold the world together.
Despite the bleak early assessment, the Mormon March eventually did bring the Church of Latter-day Saints back to the Uinta Basin, with serious settlement effort occurring in the 1880s. Upon venturing into this formerly Native American land, the Mormons soon had many of their own skinwalker tales to tell. The secret mythology was secret no longer, and the tales then spread to miners who arrived around 1885 to harvest the Uinter Basin's many valuable mineral deposits. The surrounding area, named Uinter County, now boasts a population of some 25,000 people. It is thus still sparsely populated by most standards, but considering the vastness of the region, which those first Mormon explorers quantified as valueless except for nomadic purposes, the figure demonstrates slow but steady growth. Today the miners are all but gone, and cattle ranching has been the Uinter Basin's main industry since the early 1950s, which is also when the first documented unidentified flying object sightings began to take place over the area.
Junior Hicks, a science professor at the University of Utah, was the first to gather evidence of the paranormal happenings at Skinwalker Ranch and attempt to figure out what was going on. Hicks's investigation was inspired by a group of students who witnessed what could only be described as an unidentified flying object over Skinwalker Ranch in 1951. About 30 of his students claimed to have seen a classic cigar-shaped unidentified flying object, flying over them in broad daylight. They had no doubt that they had observed something highly extraordinary, and it turned out that they weren't the only ones. Hicks's subsequent digging uncovered hundreds of first-hand accounts of unidentified flying objects and other strange phenomena occurring in and around the ranch. He soon discovered that all of these tales shared one common feature, and that common feature was the Skinwalker. Hicks was one of the first outsiders to collect extensive information about these alleged paranormal entities from Native American tribes. The tribal members he spoke with referred to the whole region as the path of the Skinwalker, and were steadfast in their refusal to go anywhere near it. Hicks eventually published his findings in a 1974 book entitled The Utah UFO Display, the first book in which skinwalkers were directly linked to the unidentified flying object phenomenon. Although Hicks mentioned the Skinwalker Ranch in this book, the ranch itself did not attract much attention until the early 1990s when the Sherman family bought the land and brought the phenomena that came with it to the world stage.
The Shermans, undoubtedly the most famous residents of Skinwalker Ranch, acquired it after the deaths of the original owners, Kenneth John Myers and Edith Child Myers. This married couple had purchased the ranch all the way back in 1933. At first their property consisted of just 103 acres, but over the years they expanded their holdings to 480 acres. They never had any children, instead throwing themselves completely into working the land. Even after Kenneth passed away in 1987, Edith stayed on at the ranch by herself until her own death on March 3, 1994. Kenneth's younger brother Garth Myers inherited the property and eventually sold it to Terry and Gwen Sherman. Not a whole lot is known about what went on before the Shermans moved in, but when they did they were absolutely puzzled to find locks and deadbolts all throughout the ranch house. There were locks on both the insides and outsides of doors, windows, and even closets. Were the previous residents really afraid of unwelcome visitors suddenly invading their closet space? Most of us believe the monster in the closet is just a product of vivid childhood imagination, but here was a home with no children, whose inhabitants were seemingly afraid of what might lurk in their bedroom closet. It all begged the question, just what had the Myers family been trying so desperately to keep out?
When the Sherman family purchased the old Myers Ranch, they assumed that they would be the only ones living on the premises. But soon enough, they began to realize that they had some company on the land. The first of these strange denizens made its presence known in the classic Skinwalker form as an utterly out of place view. Terry Sherman had been hard at work in one of the fields surrounding the ranch house when he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. He turned to see some kind of large dog-like creature in the distance. It was walking in his direction, and he immediately began a process of elimination to figure out what it might be: a dog, a coyote, or perhaps even a wolf. As it came closer, however, Terry was forced to discard such easy explanations. Whatever it was, this creature was bigger than any natural-born canine had any right to be. Before he knew what was happening, The wolfish creature had covered the entire distance between them and trotted right out in front of Terry and his family. The animal seemed peaceful, maybe even tame, and Terry saw well the help but reached out his hand to pet it. He ran his hand through its grey fur, feeling the powerful musculature below. But this animal would not remain friendly for long.
Shortly after Terry touched it, the beast turned around and ran away from him, shooting off like a thunderbolt and heading straight toward the corral in which the Shermans kept their cattle. Before Terry knew quite what was happening, it stuck its snout through the bars of the cattle pen and clamped its jaws onto the head of the calf closest to it. Taking a vice grip with its teeth, the creature began attempting to pull the baby bovine through the bars as it screamed in pain. Terry was shocked at what he was seeing, but he finally got over his surprise and ran to help the calf. Reaching the side of the wolf, or whatever it was, he delivered several blows to the beast's rib cage. When his bare hands had no effect, Terry upped the ante by grabbing a nearby baseball bat which he sent crashing down onto the attacking animal's side and back. But incredibly, the wolf creature still seemed completely unaffected. Ignoring Terry altogether, it continued its attempt to pull the crying calf through the bars of its holding pen. Desperate to stop this shameless seizure of his livestock, Terry yelled out to his son Todd, "Get my Magnum." He meant the heavy-duty handgun that he kept in his pickup truck. Todd quickly brought the weapon to his father, and Terry opened fire, scoring several direct hits on the wolf thing.
Strangely, even after being riddled with bullets, the beast didn't then to acknowledge that it was being shot. And what startled Terry even more was that his blasts left no visible bullet wounds or blood. The wolfish interloper seemed completely impervious to the gunshot onslaught. It isn't until the fourth shot, at a point-blank range, that the creature finally let go of the calf, seemingly more out of sheer annoyance than anything else. The freed baby cow ran to the safety of the other side of the corral, still wailing in pain and fear and bleeding from its injuries. Terry was left alone just a few feet from the wolf thing, and to his amazement, it still seemed completely unharmed as it stared blankly back at him. Beginning to break into an all-out panic, Terry aimed his gun at the creature's chest and let loose with one more magnum round. He made a direct hit, but the animal's only response was to slowly turn around and begin walking away at a leisurely pace. If the wolf thing had been injured by the barrage of bullets, it didn't show it.
Becoming increasingly concerned, and not willing to allow such a dangerous animal to live to raid his livestock again, Terry yelled for his son to bring him his shotgun. Armed with this much more powerful weapon, Terry opened fire on the creature once again. This time the sound of impact could be heard clearly as the 12-gauge slug tore through the animal's shoulder. Even now the creature made only the briefest of reactions, pausing for just a moment before continuing at its own slowly measured pace. Terry, shocked and somewhat incensed at the sight, then let off another round, hitting the wolf thing directly in the chest. This time Terry could clearly see gouts of blood spraying out of the open wound, but even so, the animal didn't show itself to be in any pain whatsoever as it slowly continued its course toward a patch of trees. Terry and his son were still desperate to stop the beast. They followed it into the woods, but lost sight of it after it entered the trees. However, they could clearly see its fresh tracks in the mud, and they carefully followed them, right up